The business arrangement Stella Monroe stood in the charred remains of what had once been Harvest Table, her farm-to-table restaurant that had taken 7 years of brutal work to build. The early morning sun couldn't penetrate the sooty windows, leaving the space in shadows that matched her mood. Fire investigators had confirmed what she already suspected, an electrical fault in the aging building she'd been saving to renovate. Insurance will cover about 30%, her friend and accountant, Penny explained gently. With the loan still outstanding and— I get it, Stella interrupted, running a hand through her copper curls. I'm ruined. At 34, she'd poured everything into this restaurant. Her savings, her inheritance from Grandma Ruth, and most painfully, her heart. The nationally recognized chef awards meant nothing now, not with creditors calling hourly and 15 staff members suddenly unemployed. There's something else, Penny hesitated, clutching her tablet. Someone wants to meet with you. Today, actually. Another vulture looking to buy the location for pennies? Stella kicked a charred piece of what had been her hostess stand. No, it's different. Dominic Blackwell requested a meeting at his office at 2. Stella froze. Even in culinary circles, everyone knew Dominic Blackwell, the 36-year-old tech genius who'd revolutionized artificial intelligence before turning 30. His company, Nexus Technologies, had made him a billionaire several times over. He was also notoriously private, appearing so rarely in public that gossip columns had nicknamed him the Phantom. Why would Dominic Blackwell want to meet with me? He wouldn't say, but his assistant mentioned it might be a solution to your situation. The Nexus Technologies headquarters occupied the top 10 floors of a gleaming skyscraper in the financial district. In the sleek elevator, Stella felt painfully out of place. In her only remaining professional outfit, a simple black blazer and tailored pants that couldn't hide the scent of smoke still clinging to her hair, Dominic Blackwell's office was minimalist to the point of austerity. All glass, steel, and white surfaces with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The man himself stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the panoramic view. Mr. Blackwell, his assistant announced, Ms. Monroe is here. When he turned, Stella understood why women supposedly threw themselves at him despite his reclusiveness. Tall with broad shoulders, he possessed the kind of striking features that belonged on ancient coins. Strong jaw, straight nose, and penetrating gray eyes that seemed to evaluate her like complex code. Ms. Monroe. His voice was deep but emotionless. Please sit, no handshake, no smile, no pleasantries. Just a gesture toward the chair opposite his desk. I'll be direct, he continued, sitting across from her. I've researched your situation thoroughly. Your restaurant was underinsured, your debt is substantial, and you have no viable path to recovery without external intervention. Stella stiffened. Did you invite me here to summarize my failure? A flicker of something, surprise, perhaps, crossed his face before disappearing behind his impassive mask. I invited you to propose a solution that would benefit us both. He slid a leather folder across the desk. I need a wife for exactly 1 year. You need financial salvation. I'm proposing a mutually advantageous arrangement. Stella stared at him, certain she'd misheard. Excuse me? My grandfather's will contains a stipulation that I must be married by my 37th birthday to receive controlling interest in Nexus Technologies. That birthday is in 3 weeks, and you want to marry me, a stranger? A chef with a burned-down restaurant? Precisely because you are a stranger with pressing financial needs. This is strictly business. His tone remained clinical. The terms are straightforward. We marry for 1 year. You receive $2 million immediately and $3 million upon completion of the contract. Your debts are cleared, your staff compensated, and your restaurant rebuilt if you wish. Stella's mind reeled. $5 million. Her restaurant restored. Her staff taken care of. All for pretending to be this cold man's wife for 12 months. What exactly would this arrangement require? Public appearances as a couple when necessary. Residence in my home, though in separate quarters. Discretion and adherence to a non-disclosure agreement. His eyes met hers directly. No physical relationship. No emotional entanglements. This is merely a contract. Something in his emphasis on no physical relationship felt almost like a personal affront, as if she might be desperate enough to want him that way. And after a year, we divorce amicably, citing irreconcilable differences. You retain the money. We never contact each other again. Stella opened the folder, scanning page after page of legal terminology. Her entire future condensed into clauses and subclauses. Why me? Surely there are women in your social circle who'd jump at this opportunity. Precisely why they're unsuitable. They would develop expectations beyond the contract. His gaze was assessing, almost clinical. You have no connections to my world. You need money but have demonstrated integrity in business, and you have sufficient reason to walk away after a year without complications. The implied compliment did little to warm his delivery. Stella fought the urge to throw the contract in his face and storm out. But images of her devastated staff, of Grandma Ruth's copper pots melted in the fire, of 7 years of work reduced to ash, kept her seated. I need 24 hours to consider. You have until noon tomorrow. He stood, signaling the meeting's end. My lawyer's contact information is in the folder. The offer expires in exactly 20 hours. That night, in her small apartment, one of the few things not tied to her business loans, Stella paced until dawn. By morning, practicality had overcome pride. She contacted his lawyer and signed her name to every flagged page of the contract. 3 weeks later, she stood in a custom-designed wedding gown that cost more than her first year of culinary school, about to marry a man who had spoken fewer than 100 words to her during their entire acquaintance. The lavish ceremony at Blackwell Estate felt surreal. 200 guests, none of whom she knew, watching her walk down an aisle scattered with white roses. Dominic waited at the altar, handsome in a bespoke tuxedo, but wearing the same expression he might have at a board meeting. The officiant spoke beautiful words about love and commitment that felt like hollow mockery. When the moment came to kiss the bride, Dominic leaned close, his lips near her ear. Remember our agreement, he murmured, cold and low. This is just business. I won't touch you. Something snapped inside Stella, a lifetime of fighting to be taken seriously, of proving her worth, of refusing to be diminished. Without warning, she slid her hand behind his neck and pulled his mouth to hers. The kiss was bold, deliberate, and thorough, a statement rather than an affection. She felt him freeze in shock, his body rigid against hers. Then, for the briefest moment before she pulled away, she felt something unexpected, his lips softening, responding before he caught himself. When they separated, the look in his eyes was no longer cold but burning, with anger, confusion, and something darker she couldn't name. His carefully controlled facade had cracked, revealing the human beneath the billionaire algorithm. Smile, husband, she whispered, offering her arm as cameras flashed around them. You wanted a convincing show. As they walked back down the aisle to thunderous applause, Stella felt Dominic's hand tighten almost imperceptibly on hers. The contract stated no physical relationship, but it hadn't specified no challenges. If she was signing away a year of her life, she refused to be treated as invisible. The rules of their arrangement had been clearly established. But with one impulsive kiss, Stella Monroe Blackwell had just shattered the most important one. Uneasy coexistence. The Blackwell estate sprawled across 5 acres of manicured grounds, a modern glass and stone mansion that felt more like a museum than a home. Stella's suite occupied the east wing, as far from Dominic's quarters as architecturally possible. Mrs. Blackwell, breakfast is served at 7, informed Mrs. Hudson, the housekeeper, with barely concealed curiosity about her employer's sudden marriage. Please call me Stella, she replied, unpacking her meager belongings in the cavernous closet already filled with designer clothes in her size. For the first week, Dominic and Stella orbited each other like wary planets, their paths rarely crossing. He left before she woke and returned after she retired, maintaining the distance he'd promised, yet the wedding kiss lingered between them, unacknowledged but palpable. On the 8th day, Dominic entered the kitchen as Stella prepared her own dinner, ignoring the chef he employed. You cook, he observed, as if discovering she had an unusual talent. I was a chef before I was your contractual wife, she reminded him, slicing vegetables with professional precision. His eyes followed her movements. We have staff for that. Cooking centers me. She glanced up. You should try it sometime. Finding peace in creating rather than acquiring. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, perhaps, or curiosity. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. After checking the message, his expression hardened. There's been speculation about our marriage. The board is concerned about its authenticity. He spoke as if discussing a business merger. We need to attend the Henderson Gala tomorrow night. As a convincing couple? Precisely, Stella smiled without warmth. Should I anticipate another don't touch me war? Walls crumbling. The annual Nexus Technologies charity ball arrived 6 weeks into their arrangement. Photographers lined the red carpet, eager to capture the reclusive billionaire and his mysterious new wife. Stella descended the mansion staircase in an emerald gown that transformed her from pretty to breathtaking. Dominic's practiced indifference faltered visibly. "You look," he began, then stopped, seemingly unable to find appropriately detached words. "You too," she replied, straightening his bow tie with unexpected intimacy. "Shall we convince the world we're madly in love?" Throughout the evening, their practiced performance began feeling less like pretense. Dominic's hand lingered on her back. Stella's laugh at his comments came naturally. They moved together with increasing ease like dancers finding rhythm. The shift didn't go unnoticed. Dominic's former flame, Victoria Pierce, approached during a moment alone. "She's quite the actress," Victoria purred, nodding towards Stella across the room. "Though I suppose for 5 million anyone would pretend to love you." Dominic stiffened. "You know nothing about my marriage." "I know everything." Victoria smiled coldly. "The inheritance clause, the contract, the separate bedrooms. Does your board know their CEO is living a lie?" Before Dominic could respond, Victoria approached Stella, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "It must be difficult being married to a man incapable of genuine emotion. A living computer." To Victoria's surprise, Stella smiled. "Actually, my husband feels deeply. He simply chooses carefully who deserves to see it." Dominic appeared at Stella's side, his expression thunderous. Victoria was just leaving. When they were alone on the balcony afterward, Dominic's mask cracked. "Why did you defend me?" "It wasn't in the contract." "Because she was cruel and I know what that's like." Stella studied him. "Why does everyone think you're incapable of emotion?" The question hung between them until, unexpectedly, Dominic answered. "My parents died when I was 10. My grandfather took me in and taught me that feelings were weaknesses to be exploited. To succeed, be the exploiter, never the exploited." "That's a terrible lesson to teach a child," Stella said softly. "It built a billion-dollar company." His voice held no pride, only resignation. "And a man who sleeps in an empty wing of his mansion, afraid of a kiss." Their eyes met, acknowledgement of the growing tension between them passing silently. "I'm not afraid of you," he insisted. Stella smiled sadly. "Perhaps that's the problem. You should be." Breaking point. 3 months into their marriage, the mansion had subtly transformed. Stella's influence appeared in fresh flowers on tables, cookbooks in the kitchen, and soft throws on rigid furniture. More significantly, Dominic had begun arriving home for dinner, ostensibly to maintain their cover story. Their conversations grew longer, spanning business, philosophy, and eventually personal histories. Dominic found himself sharing thoughts he'd never voiced to anyone, while Stella revealed the childhood that had driven her relentless work ethic. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday. Stella's car skidded off the road returning from visiting her former sous chef. Though her injuries were minor, a sprained wrist and bruised ribs, Dominic's reaction was anything but. He arrived at the hospital wild-eyed, having abandoned a crucial investor meeting. His hand trembled as he brushed hair from her forehead. His mask of indifference completely shattered. "You could have died," he whispered, voice breaking. "It would have complicated your inheritance," Stella attempted to joke, but Dominic didn't smile. "I don't care about the inheritance. I care about you." The admission hung between them, more significant than any contract. That night he insisted on helping her to bed, gently arranging pillows to support her injured side. As he turned to leave, Stella caught his hand. "Stay, just to talk." What began as conversation evolved into something more as Dominic finally surrendered to the connection he'd been fighting. His kiss was tentative at first, then hungry with months of denied longing. "This wasn't in our agreement," he murmured against her lips. "Some contracts need renegotiation," she replied, drawing him closer. Their newfound intimacy lasted 3 perfect weeks before shattering. While using Dominic's laptop to order groceries, Stella accidentally opened his banking software. There she discovered monthly payments to each of her former restaurant staff, payments she'd never authorized or known about. When confronted, Dominic's expression closed immediately. You looked through my financial records. That's what concerns you? Not that you've been secretly paying my staff behind my back. I thought you'd be grateful, he said stiffly. They needed help. I'm not your charity case, Dominic. You should have told me, involved me in decisions about my own people. His walls rebuilt instantly. Our arrangement was financial from the beginning. I provided funds. How is this different? Because I thought we'd become more than a contract. Stella's voice broke. I thought you finally saw me, saw us as real. This marriage was never meant to be real, Dominic replied coldly, retreating behind his emotional barriers. Perhaps we've both forgotten that. Rewriting the contract as their contract neared its end, Stella began packing. Though financially secure as promised, she felt hollowed out, grieving what had briefly flourished between them before withering under Dominic's retreat into emotional isolation. For weeks, they'd reverted to their initial arrangement, separate lives, minimal interaction, cold courtesy. The mansion felt more sterile than ever, despite the touches Stella had added during her temporary residence. Dominic watched her preparations from a distance, his expression unreadable. Only Mrs. Hudson noticed the dark circles under his eyes, his distraction during meetings, the way he lingered in rooms where Stella's influence remained strongest. On the anniversary of their wedding, exactly 1 year after their contract began, Stella prepared to leave. Her bags waited by the door as she made a final walkthrough of the kitchen, where they'd shared so many unexpected conversations. You're really leaving? She turned to find Dominic in the doorway, looking more uncertain than she'd ever seen him. The contract is fulfilled, she said simply. You have your inheritance. I have my settlement. And if I want to propose a new arrangement, Stella shook her head. I can't do another business transaction, Dominic. I'm not merchandise to be acquired. I didn't understand before. He approached slowly. When I discovered you were helping your staff with the money I provided, I thought you'd betrayed my trust. It took me weeks to realize you were using your own settlement funds, not taking more from me. They lost their livelihoods because of me, Stella explained. I couldn't rebuild and leave them behind. That's when I understood what my grandfather never taught me. That true? Strength isn't in emotional isolation, but in caring enough to be vulnerable. Dominic withdrew a document from his pocket. This is a new contract. Stella took it reluctantly, then gasped. The single page contained only a few lines. Dominic Blackwell, promised to love Stella Monroe Blackwell without condition or reservation for as long as she will have me. No terms, no expiration date, no withdrawal clauses. When she looked up, Dominic had dropped to one knee. I promised to never touch you, then discovered touch was the only thing that made me feel alive, he said softly. I promised a business arrangement, then found something far more valuable. If you'll stay, not as my contractual wife, but as my real one, I promise to spend every day proving that what began as pretense has become the most genuine thing in my life. Stella knelt before him, their eyes level. No more separate wings, no more emotional distance, no more barriers, he promised. Only truth between us. Then I accept your terms, she whispered, sealing their new contract with a kiss that contained all the promise their first one had only hinted at, as Dominic helped carry her bags back, upstairs, to their shared bedroom this time. Stella realized that sometimes the most binding contracts were the ones written not on paper, but on two hearts finally brave enough to sign.